Again, just let me know if anyone cannot see my screen.
Perfect, all good.
All good? Okay. All right, guys, well, we'll kick off. So this particular session is going to run through website user experience. So as John has mentioned before, digital marketing is one of the best when it comes to jargon and abbreviation, and you may have also seen the user experience referred to as UX, which is just shorthand for that. So what we're going to do is explain the practice of taking what they call a user-centric approach when we're looking at website design. And put simply, the goal of user experience in user-centric design is to create an experience for your user when visiting your website that's 100% positive, basically. So it produces a positive experience, results in the objective that you're trying to achieve with any given page, and so forth. So we're going to go through and achieve a bit of an understanding around the impacts of user experience. We're going to talk specifically around load speeds, how you can actually test load speed on your site. We're going to look at reading experience and the use of colour. We're going to hone in on what actual user-centric design is and means. We're going to cover off on some top-level Google Analytics and how they can actually shed some insight into how your website is functioning. We're going to look at how we integrate user experience within business goals and subsequently your marketing goals. Go through some top tips, and then we'll just go through a bit of a summary. So we'll kick off. So there's not really any activity sheets, as John mentioned, to this particular session. However, there are some free tools which I'll reference throughout, which you can jot down, and I'll give you some sort of time just to jump in and actually run some little tests on your site and that sort of thing as we go through. But let's kick off. So what does the user experience impact when it comes to your website and ultimately your business? So your business's credibility is judged by the quality of your website. Now, I want you guys to not sort of feel too close to your own website as such, but I want you to be honest when you're thinking about when you've actually been, cruising the web and jumping on websites that haven't functioned or have taken forever to load or have been quite clunky, or you've had to take, 60 steps to get to where you are. So it's probably the moments of frustration that come to mind quicker than the moments where you've had a really positive experience and you've been able to purchase something or download a piece of content or make a booking really quickly. That's basically what we're talking about here. So website users say 75% of their judgment regarding a business's credibility is derived by how well their company website is designed. So a bad website experience creates a negative effect on your customers. So according to 67% of website users, a poor experience on a website negatively affects their opinion. And of not just one business in the case of a franchise, but the entire brand. So that's what we're talking about. Obviously a collection of businesses. If we've got one that's falling down, then it's a bad representation of the whole entire brand. So people don't return to poorly designed sites. So if they've had a bad experience, they're very unlikely to come back. So it only takes one bad website experience for up to 88% of consumers to be less likely to return back to that website. So, if we try and put this in context, if you've got a poorly designed site that is underperforming, that's quite clunky, slow to load, doesn't have a clear call to action or a clear directive as to what you want that potential customer to do, and you are throwing money at a digital marketing tactic and driving traffic through to that website, it's basically sort of dead in the water as far as it's falling short and not performing for you. So whilst all your other digital marketing tactics may be really successful and are driving through this traffic, your website is letting you down. So it's really important to identify and analyze if you are deploying digital tactics out there and you're using your website as this central tool to capture leads or create subscriptions, or you have web forms on there where you've got people wanting to take action or shop or that sort of thing, and that's not happening, or your website's not facilitating that, then you really need to sort of press pause and make sure that you've got a plan around remedying that. So they were just some key stats around, design statistics by a company called InTechnic, which have got some really cool blog posts around that topic. So when we talk about user experience, we're talking about elements that obviously reflect on your business. So it affects the credibility of your business, whether it's desirable or not. Is it accessible? Is it valuable, useful, usable, and findable? So all of these things you can influence in conjunction with your web designer. And there'll be some of the things that we're going to cover off on. So is user experience or lack thereof impacting on your branding efforts? So think about your own internet habits and what you do if a website is slow to load or you can't find what you're looking for. So how have these experiences impacted your opinion of that brand? So if you've visited a website, and let's talk about remarketing, for instance. So if you've had something come up in your social feed, you've clicked through on an ad, you've gone to the website, you might have popped a few things in your cart, and then you've become distracted and you've abandoned it. And then all of a sudden, you're getting more and more of these ads coming up in your Facebook feed. You're effectively being remarketed to. But if you've gone into that site and it took you an hour just to load those 2 items into your shopping cart because the site was so ridiculously clunky and so slow, that company is now paying money to remarket to you, but you are never going to go back there because it was just such a negative experience. So that's where it's important to really make sure that your website, functionality, as well as your website, the back end of it is working properly, and you're not just, you're not wasting money from an advertising point of view. So let's talk about site load speed for a minute. Now there's some really cool free tools out there. One of those is gtmetrics.com. And what that'll do is it'll basically just test the speed. Just let Christine in. Hi, Christine. It'll test basically the load speed of your website. And this can also give you some insight around, how much work may or may not need to be done. So if you guys have got a minute now, you can just jump on, just Google gtmetrics.com, just gtmetrics.com, sorry. And you can just pop in your URL and just run a quick test. Now, what that'll do is it'll give you a whole heap of statistics. Don't get too sort of bombarded by that. But what we want to look at is the initial load speed, and that is measured by a thing called LCP, which is another abbreviation, which user experience loves to have all of these abbreviations in there. What that basically LCP stat means is it's largest content paint. So imagine, there's the browser is trying to paint that biggest asset. It might be a massive big background on your website. It could be a big web banner. It might be a massive big headline or something or other that you've got on your website. It's the largest visual piece of your website. That's what that is measuring. How long does it take for that to load? And load speed as a metric, from a user experience and a website functionality point of view, it's one of the most single significant elements of core web vitals. So if this is significantly low, and we've got a benchmark here of, for good user experience, we want to aim for, 1.2 seconds or less for load speed. And again, obviously, sometimes, like I'm out on satellite, I need to take that into account. So, obviously this is void of, hardware and connectivity issues. This is just core. This is basically your website as it is in its best form. How long does it take to load?
Your question is simply Googling your own web page isn't a reliable to test how fast you load. Tools that we're on here, they download. They track all the files that it downloads. So not only will it tell you how fast your site's load, but it tells you maybe problem files that are taking too long to download that are impacting your speed. So it'll give you a little bit more information about it. So we wouldn't typically rely on Google to tell us how fast the site's loading. We definitely recommend using something like GTmetrics to do that for you.
And there's a lot of free tools out there that will offer this. Sometimes it's good to get, a couple of different metrics, and just be cautious, because obviously very rarely anything is not, necessarily for free. They could try and loop you into some sort of subscription of some sort. So just be mindful of that. Other things around load speed that can be quick wins is to identify, and this is probably more so with, online booking systems and things like that, is if you've got multiple plugins or duplicate plugins, or it could be rendered old plugins that you're not actually using anymore. Sometimes these are quite impactful on load speed. And the other thing as well is to perhaps revisit your hosting platform. If you're on shared hosting, you may want to, consider looking at going to a private server or even cloud options. So they're all things that, if you can cross those off the top of your list and make sure that they're not the culprits. If you know that your imagery on your website is optimized and smallest that it can be, then there's some other sort of red flags that you can just check off to make sure that they're not the problems. So we'll go on to reading experience. So this is sort of around the, I know we looked at brand development, and these next couple of topics that work, they pretty much are drawn, like the actual styling, colors, fonts, everything like that is actually drawn from your brand style guide. So you don't want to go to the effort of having a qualified designer develop your brand, develop your style guide, identify what your style of photography, your tone of voice, your color palette is, and your use of fonts, to then jump online and go on a completely different tangent. So again, all of this should be maintaining consistency and singing the same song as of any other collateral you've got out in the marketplace. So when we're looking at content and reader experience, we want to be answering the questions. So a visitor is looking for answers to their pressing questions. So generally anything that distracts from a visitor's ability to address their needs at that point in time should be avoided. So remove any distraction, basically, and get to the point. That means that you want your visitor experience on your website to be simple and quick to understand and get to what they need. And especially if you have got paid or any other initiatives and tactics out in the marketplace that you are using to drive traffic back to the website, be very conscious, and it's always good to go back and revisit what is the messaging on those pieces, whether it be a Google Ads or whether it be a call to action, on social, or whether it be a click through from your EDM. What are you actually proposing that the user is going to see when they land on that page? So making sure that you've got real congruency between your messaging and where they end up. So keep your paragraphs, short. Keep it simple. So you're not just blabbering on for the sake of blabbering on, and making sure that you're not got these massive paragraphs of copy that don't have any formatting. Short sentences. Avoid jargon where you can. And use digital writing tools. So this was where I mentioned in this morning's session that you can take advantage of free apps such as Grammarly, which will help you pick up on errors. Not only that, it also will help you with the style of writing. You can actually even put in personality types that will help. It'll give you suggestions around how you can sort of better craft your copy, and it will also assist you with keywords as well. So it's quite a cool little tool to have a play with, that one. So colour. So like visuals, colours should be used to direct readers to the key elements on a web page, so they can help with, leveraging, bright colours for call to actions. So when we look at buttons, there's been a huge amount of, colour psychology done around, what colours, call to action buttons should be. There's a lot of A/B testing that goes on around that as well. You can obviously do some trials and testers. So again, we want to make sure though that we're actually referencing colours from our corporate branding and our colour palette that was established in our style guides. And just remember that that colours can create emotional response, and ensure you're aligning these with your intentions. Maintain consistency throughout your site, use fonts consistently, and ensure these two follow your brand guidelines. So that's where you've got consistent headers, consistent subheaders, and consistent body, font styles for each. So it doesn't matter what page you land on your website, it has the look and feel of your brand. So we'll have a quick look at site architecture. So this is where we start to have a look at the way that a business might identify their navigation, for instance, but they're also at the onset identifying who they're actually talking to. So these two companies are direct competitors in the marketplace. So we're looking at Polaris on the top there versus Can-Am down the bottom. So they are taking a very different approach at the point that someone lands on their homepage through a search, for instance. So Polaris, they're offering their full suite of sub-product categories, whereas Can-Am down the bottom wants to segregate straight at the get-go. Are you an off-road potential client or are you on-road? So you're one or the other. So they may have made that decision through, customer research that they've got, that they've very rarely customers play in both sides of the business. So they find that they've got a very different way of talking. They've got a very different, obviously, library of imagery, very different product categories, and very rarely does someone that has bought an off-road, vehicle also, buy something that's going to be used in a metro space. So navigation should be clear and uncluttered, whilst also allowing the user to get to where they want in the least amount of clicks possible. And you can probably recall an experience where you've just wanted to, get to a piece of content or get to a form or make a booking or purchase a ticket, and it's like another click and another click and another click and a scroll and a click. So you want to avoid that as much as you can. And the other big thing to be very mindful of is mobile responsiveness. And what that means is basically your site can function effectively on both a desktop application as well as a mobile device. There are some websites that are still only structured for desktop, and therefore when you're trying to use it on a mobile, it doesn't function effectively. Or it could be that they've got, two versions of the site. One isn't updated, the mobile version is not as current as what the desktop application is. So there's still quite, a few sort of bad examples where that is still the case. But, you look at any of your data around desktop and mobile, device usage in your stats, and you'll see that it is just so critical that your website is built so that it is mobile responsive. Okay, so we'll talk about user-centric design. So site visitors are not going to stick around if the site doesn't fit their needs. So to create content and design a website that is truly user-centric, small business owners must know their audience. And this is where you'll hear, both Jono and I say that it is such an integral part of any marketing strategy, is this whole intel around who your target audience is. So understanding who they are, how they speak, what they're looking for. So to understand your audience, small business owners should review website analytics, turn to market research tools, get an overall look at trends, demographics, or you could actually, take on some intel research yourself and actually look at customer surveys with your existing clients. You could chat with customers openly. You could have a bit of a, an open forum, or, leverage feedback on social media, or you could do focus groups. There's a whole range of different tactics that you can use to try and gather firsthand experience and feedback from those who are actually actively using your site. So what can Google Analytics tell us about user experience? So again, there's, for those of you that are using Google Analytics, this will just sort of be a bit of a refresher. For those of you that haven't really delved much into it, there are a series of cheat sheets around getting this set up. that you can access to get yourself started. But this will give you a bit of a top level overview around what it can do and how it can help you identify if you've got any areas of improvement on your site. So Google Analytics is one of the most powerful tools and it's free. So it's, it's there ready for you to access if you've got a site in a live capacity. And it's one of the most powerful tools that, as a marketer, you have at your fingertips. So you should have it on your site. And if you don't, you can get started really quickly and start tracking, visitation and gaining insights around how people are using your website. So just a couple of snapshots here from the main primary dashboard. You can actually see at any given time how many people are on your site. You can obviously see visits plus the percentage of new visits. So that gives you a breakdown of, returning versus non-returning. You can see the duration of, how many time or how long people have spent on particular pages of your site. You can obviously drill right down into, logistics and by state, by city, by postcode, that sort of thing. And you can also see, visits by traffic type. So you can actually start to drill down in the acquisition section and split your traffic out by social versus paid versus organic versus referral. So if you've got, partner sites out there that are actually got backlinks through to your site, you can break all of that down and see that by percentage and numbers as well. So the other cool thing that analytics will also help you with is conversion tracking. Now, so once you've got sorry, the screen just went black then. Yeah, so we'll just go through some of the main acquisition metrics that Google Analytics can help you see. And source is one of those. So what that will do is actually break down effectively the top channels of where traffic is coming through from the outside world through to your website. So this is just a basic click of acquisition, and then you can click overview, and that'll give you the top level stats. And then from there you can actually break down and go even sort of deeper and and by channel, by state, that sort of thing. So if you've got, probably more so relevant if you've got sort of national campaigns that have been deployed and you want to see how each of those pieces of content are performing against each other by state or by regional town or city, then this can effectively tell you that. So that's those ones. And again, much like Facebook Insights, this is a bit of a rabbit hole. You can get lost in all of the data. But these are just some of the top sort of 7 metrics that I would sort of, if this is something that you haven't constantly monitored or you're wanting to start constantly monitoring, I would just pick these top 7 and run with them for a set duration of time before you start delving in and looking at anything in more detail or adding more to your list. So you get your head around and really start to sort of see how you can actually influence these numbers, then I would build on that. So then you can look at sort of page views versus unique page views. So page views is basically just that. It's a view of a page on your website. So Google Analytics unique page views takes into account the same user going to a single page multiple times per session. So if your content is really, really remarkable, they'll keep coming back. So unique page views are a very strong indicator of this, but also take them with a grain of salt. So it's if you've got repeat patronage through to a page, you can obviously watch that content. It depends as well what the motive is and what the intent is when people are clicking through to that page. So if you've got like a registration form on there, for instance, and you've had a huge amount of click through, you've had a lot of actual page views on that page, but you haven't had any conversions. It could be that the form is too long. So your marketing outside of your website's worked. It's driven the traffic through. You've got a huge amount of page views, but you can't quantify that that's a success indicator because you don't have the conversions to marry with it. So that's why it's important to actually put page views in context. Average time on page. So this is the amount of time spent on any single page. So obviously longer amounts of time mean that, you know, you've got high levels of engagement. People are sticking with it. They're reading the content. They're exploring the site. So, you know, a blog article, for instance, if that's of interest, you know, they're giving their time because they're getting quality content back in exchange. And it's a good quality indicator, basically. So entrances. So these are the number of page views for the first page a visitor lands on when they are visiting a website. So this is an actual metric that you can measure. So in other words, it's the number of time that a particular page was the first page viewed on any session. So this will be, you know, you'll know exactly what your high entrance pages will be if you are physically driving traffic through to that page as opposed to your homepage, for instance. So some of, you know, these metrics are going to be, well, that's an expected, you know, I'm going to have an expected lift on that particular page because that's where I'm driving those Facebook or those social promos through to. But at the same time, it can be a reflection on, you know, on content that is on trend, or it could be a reflection on a shift in, you know, keyword searches and things like that. So if you've got any, you know, increases that are out of character or are not expected, it's good just to delve a little bit further in and find out what the reason is behind that. So we'll talk about bounce rate. So this is a percentage of single page sessions that left without interacting any further. So in other words, they left the site entirely. So they're a good thing to watch. There are also they're like a top level metric around relevance and content quality as well. So you need to keep an eye on this metric. If any pages change drastically or the whole site does, then you need to do some investigating as to why that's happening. And again, this is a good indicator when you're, you know, driving traffic through to a particular website. If you're then asking the user to, you know, complete a form or enter a competition or you know, do some sort of, you know, action, and they're just abandoning the page, then you need to identify, okay, well, what's stopping them from actually engaging further? Is the form too long? Is the form broken? Does it not give a confirmation message? Is my messaging not clear? Is there, you know, is there a glitch in the form? Is there a required field that shouldn't be a required field? So that's always good to track. And any anomalies that are quite significant in a very short period of time would be to, you know, investigate that further and find out what's going on. So your exit percentages. So this is the page that was last in a given session. Christine, your bounce rates, again, they need to be taken into context as to why the bounce rate would be happening. There are a lot of benchmarks for particular industries out there. I always like to look at bounce rates on core pages as opposed to looking at an overall average, because you can have one page, like you could have the whole site absolutely singing, and you could have one landing page or one particular core page that has a form on it that is the problem, and that will bring the whole site down. So it's I always like to look at that metric basically by page, as opposed to an overall average. Jonna, did you have anything else to say about that, the benchmarking for as to when you should be concerned and not concerned?
Yeah, I think main point of rate is to target the level of your website. So got an ad into your website. If the ad matches, if they're looking at you, they'll stay on your website. So the idea of a bounce rate indicates whether the people that are visiting your website find that your website is relevant to them. So what we're looking for is a really clear-cut connection between visitation and relevance between that visitation. Yesterday I gave an example on two alternate businesses. One could be kayaking Lake Eacham, the other could be fishing Lake Tinaroo. If you've searched fishing Lake Tinaroo, but you've clicked on a website that said kayaking Lake Eacham, and you've landed on this website that's all about kayaking and not fishing, you would leave that website, which would give them a bounce. So that would increase their bounce rate because the content wasn't relevant to what I was looking for as a user. So as Kylene mentioned, overall as a website probably isn't the best way to be looking at bounce rate, but looking at it specifically around maybe an individual page that you might be making people click to. If you've got people coming from a Facebook ad to one of those pages and that page has a really high bounce rate, you would think that maybe what your ad is saying and what your Facebook page looks like and then what your website page looks like, they're not the same. So people aren't seeing the direct connection between the two. So you'd really want to focus on making sure that your content matches what you're asking, what someone is looking for. That relevance is probably a big takeaway when it comes to that 0.5 on your bounce rate.
Yep, thanks, Jono. And another thing to add to that with Google Ads, there used to be a trend that you'd jump on there and you'd add every competitor known to man as one of your keywords, and all that really does at the end of the day is just puts your bounce rate through the roof effectively, because you're not delivering on the promise. So you're basically tricking that potential user into clicking on your ad thinking that it's a search result for a different company that they're actually, when they click through to your site, they think this isn't who I searched for. So they jump straight off. So yeah, it is about it's a good relevance measure, as Jono said, to make sure that what you're promising when you're casting your net is what they're getting when they land on your website. So how does user experience affect business goals? So your website should guide visitors to help them meet a business goal. So obviously those business goals sit above you've got your business plan, then you've got your marketing plan, and then inside your marketing plan you've got your actual digital marketing plan. So they all basically cascade and effectively work together to meet these higher business goals. So this means all visuals on a web page should guide readers to take an action to meet that goal without any distractions, basically. So we want to guide that journey effectively without offering any distractions, and making sure that they actually proceed to do what we want them to do as a marketer. So most common website goals could include, just increased, driving of awareness around a product or a service or a business, generating leads, new sales for a business, generating, phone calls. So just increasing that level of inquiry, booking appointments or making reservations, and increased online sales if we've got obviously an e-commerce capacity or the ability to make, bookings and take deposits and things like that. So, readers' eyes gravitate towards images first. So instead of using stock photography, use a product image to depict, key introductory information like what a product looks like and its benefits. And this is where, especially if we're in, these, lifestyle or type industry sectors where we're really trying to paint the picture and immerse the user in the potential experience, it is super critical that the imagery and the photography that you use is a high quality. So a couple of selfies, yourself when it might be booking accommodation, you'll always be clicking through the photos, and if they're a bit dodgyville, then that is obviously going to impact on the ability for you to potentially convert that potential customer to a sale. So you want to put photography, and again, investing in photography or videography content for your business is something that is not a it's not a one-hit wonder. That's it's just building a library of collateral assets that you have to market your business, and they can be deployed, in multiple different channels at various different times. So it's a well worth investment that ultimately has a huge impact on the quality of your content that you're putting out there in a digital space. Not to mention that it's obviously you can use it in print collateral as well. And don't forget mobile. So websites not only need to fit in with a different various frames of countless devices, but they also support how a user prefers, to browse the internet. So optimizing a website for mobile is a standard step with web development these days, and ensures that the user experience is as best as it can be. Once the mobile website's created, it's important to test it on multiple different devices and browsers just to make sure that the experience is both consistent across all platforms and devices. So that is basically best practice with web development nowadays. And you can always see in both your analytics as well as your Facebook insights the actual breakdown of desktop usage versus mobile devices as well, just to help you understand the relevance of that. So Google friendly. So Google states that a page speed is definitely a ranking factor in search results. Mobile responsiveness, user-centric content, and the use of relevant search terms all greatly work together to improve the chances that your content will appear in front of your target audience. So phrases of content such as subheadings, page titles, actually determine where your page lands in search results. And those with more optimized keywords used in their page content appear higher than others. So I know Jono touched on SEO yesterday in one of the sessions, and just how SEO works in conjunction with Google AdWords and how your ads are ranked. So this is just talking about organic, natural content that's falling on your page. Just be mindful around, if you do have other, if you've got paid activities out there such as Google Ads, you obviously want to make sure that you've got a definite congruency between your keywords and your headlines and your subheaders and your descriptions in your Google Ads world as what you've got on your actual website. But at the same time, if you're not playing in the space of Google Ads and you're relying on organic traffic, you want to make sure that you're putting yourself in the prospect's seat and understanding what are they actually physically plugging into Google to find, your business, your service, your experience. And there's, no harm in quite often jumping in and doing an incognito search, where if you're on Windows, you just basically jump up to the three little dots on the top right-hand corner and just do new incognito window. And what that does is basically just gives you a blank canvas. So Google doesn't have the capacity to take into account any of your search history. And that will give you a bird's eye view of what a new prospect will find when you plug in any of the search phrases. So you can do that from time to time. I recommend doing it all the time to see how your site is coming up, and seeing just what the results are for different types of search phrases for your business or service within the area. And that can definitely help with crafting content for your website. So where possible as well, if you can include links to other relevant sources, that helps build credibility from Google's perspective. So, we were talking about networking previously. If there's other businesses that may be in a different, they've obviously got a different target market, but you guys complement each other. It could be that you can, cross promote between yourselves and actually link to each other's sites. There could be information at the Visitor Information Centre that might be relevant to customers that are also looking at booking and purchasing with you. So wherever you can actually create some of those links to other resources, that will help substantiate your relevance in Google's eyes as well. And at the same time, if you're doing that, making sure that you touch base with them and make sure they're linking back. So it's a tit for tat. If you're scratching someone's back, make sure they're scratching yours as well. So some user experiences, hit and misses. So the best user experience designed website designs not only look good, but they also work to give the visitors a really seamless, positive experience. They can navigate really easily and they can find the information that they're looking for. So these are two examples which, after what we've talked about, you're going to sort of see instantaneously how they're quite different. And you can probably talk about these in more detail when you're face to face with Jono. But if we have a look at these two, And I actually ran the site speed checker across both of these, and the second one is probably still trying to give me a score. But yeah, so we had this one came in at just under 1 second of load speed, even though it does have that, you know, large background there. So obviously that's been optimized effectively. And then in stark contrast, we're going to have a look at this one here, which you can see straight away. And obviously these are very chalk and cheese examples, but you know, you do have such a short window of time to impress someone to stay with you in this online space. So it is super critical that every, you know, element that you do have the opportunity to optimize, you take advantage of it. So, you know, we can have a look at this one here. Now, this particular snapshot is also referred to as above the page fold, which is odd that there's, you know, been a, you know, that sort of old-fashioned terminology applied to a digital asset. But when we're talking about real estate above the page fold, we're talking about that first instantaneous view. So what does a customer first, you know, see within that screenshot? And this is where you've really got to put your best foot forward, and not overclutter, make best use of it, and don't, you know, obviously with this particular example, you know, make sure you've actually got some structure there. So there's this massive void with absolutely nothing there. So, you know, they're not actually, you know, they're not here. So these guys have obviously closed down over COVID. They've still not given anyone any indication as to when they're going to be opening again. You know, there's issues with, is this a navigation? Is this even clickable? The page scrolls, you know, indefinitely. There's also an indication going, okay, well, is this actually Tamworth, Australia, or is this actually Tamworth, Great Britain? So there's a lot of issues here for this particular site. Whereas here you can obviously see they've made really good use of that top of the page real estate. You know, they've got their branding in there. Their fonts are consistent across the site. You know, they've obviously given a bit of an indicator of what the style of food is that a person can expect. Navigation is clear. There's call to actions there. You know, they can say, tell us straight away that you can dine in, or they'll also deliver, you know, and the fact that they're back open. So they're obviously two very extreme examples, but you can see how, yeah, you know, that first instant has very strong influence over the success of, and, you know, someone actually delving deeper into your site. So we'll go through some top tips. So we want to aim to ensure a seamless user experience and company branding when integrating plugins. So this is something to consider more so for, you know, people, anyone that's sort of maybe leveraging or using, you know, booking systems, or could be, you know, even sort of, you know, like menu log, that sort of thing, like anything that's an added, you know, an added level of functionality that's not internally built into your site. Just be mindful that, you know, if they can, if there is a white label option that allows you to brand it, so allows you to apply, you know, your corporate colors, or even apply your logo, have a look into that. If it's obviously not, you know, if it's still within budget, what that will do is, at the point that someone clicks from, you know, on that book now, and they transition into the plugin, they'll feel like they're still with you as a company. They've not just jumped into, you know, they're not sort of shocked. There's not a jar to the experience. It could be that you can investigate the use of iframes to house a booking plugin, or house, you know, these plugins, so they effectively don't have to leave your site. You know, people are very, very conscious if a URL changes, you know, because people are just quite cautious these days. And if you find that you don't even have a reference to your business name within that plugin URL, sometimes people will just abandon it because they're not quite sure if they're actually dealing with you anymore. So just be conscious of that. Incorporate the use of web forms as opposed to email links, so you can have the opportunity to capture any additional data and conversion tracking. So web forms obviously give you the capacity. It allows you to acquire leads. If you've just got a page on your site with your phone number and your email address, and you expect the potential customer to pick the phone up and send you an email, you're taking them away from the site, but you're also expecting, another step outside of, that platform. They're already there. They're on their phone. They're on their desktop. Just make life easy for them. So wherever you can, integrate web forms into your site. They can just be emailed to you if you're not actually, working a CRM platform as such, but it allows you to track data. So you've got their contact details. You're able to email them back. You're able to make contact with them, because effectively at that point the ball's in your court. So yes, can't sort of talk about web forms enough. So reassess your imagery and make sure that your current imagery is projecting the right impression. If you're talking about exhilaration and action and adrenaline and excitement, and then you've got a very calm or sort of relaxed image where it's very contrasty to what your actual vocabulary is, then yeah, it's not supporting that experience. So just making sure that you've got everything is working hand in hand and you've got that consistency. Using contact forms, and that's, sorry, just to go back another step on imagery, and that's where it's really important to actually invest in your own unique photography, because there's nothing worse than seeing stock images popping up in your social feed that other businesses are using. So at that point, your point of difference and uniqueness has gone out the window. So that's where, if you've got a product, service and experience that is unique, look to how you can actually build some sort of image capture or videography, content development into your budget to make sure that you can back that up. So we've talked about, maximizing that top of the fold real estate. So lead with your best-selling product. Make sure you are establishing what your unique selling proposition is. An amazing image that can become unique to you. That's used and featured on your homepage. That's also then used on, your socials. That in itself can become part and parcel of, your identity. So if someone is following you on Facebook and Insta, and then they've seen something come up in their social feed and they've clicked through to your website, that image has remained consistent. So it could be the fourth time that they've seen it. They instantaneously feel comfortable because they know that that's you. So don't underestimate, the power of having good quality imagery that can become part of your brand toolkit. And make it easy to contact you. So obviously the big companies are great at hiding phone numbers and making it really difficult for you to actually reach out to them and talk to a person. When we're in the service industry and, we're wanting to create relationships, we don't want to be doing that. So, we want to be able to integrating, click to call functionality and having your contact details and the ability, multiple ways for someone to actually reach out and talk to you if they wish. So we'll go through a couple of quick wins, the way that you can look at your user experience and the way that can actually assist your digital marketing efforts. So when you're looking at your website, we want to look at, and some of you may have heard, micro versus macro conversions. So really they're just like small wins versus bigger wins. So a macro conversion might be an actual physical booking that's been made, whereas a micro conversion might be that they have read one of your blog posts and go, oh, these guys are really, quite entertaining in the way that they write. I would really want to, I'd love to be able to, book a holiday with the family and come up to Atherton. I'm just going to, subscribe to their blog post and keep getting to know them and what's on offer. So there's sort of two options. So with that micro conversion, you may have only captured my email address as far as being able to then market to me, but it could be that in the lead up to, by what I've read, by what blog post I've subscribed to and I've engaged with, in the lead up to the school holidays, you can actually send me out an e-newsletter that might have, some family package deals or something like that. So it gives you the ability to actually start to put me into a flow where you can start to remarket to me and put other offers and entice me back to make a macro conversion, basically. So landing pages, thank you pages, following your initial conversion. Try and capitalize on a secondary conversion. So it could be with the online coffee business that we were talking to in the earlier session. If you've had someone jump on, purchase purchase their normal coffee order, their thank you for your order. We look forward to seeing you next time or something like that. Have you seen? It might be that you've got an offer on travel mugs or, some sort of diversification that we discussed. That's another really great way to cross-sell and upsell, with an additional, product line or have And you'll see e-commerce use that all the time, at the point that you're shopping and you've added something to your cart, you'll see that module come up where people also bought, so that you've got these constant feeders and triggers of, to try and entice you to increase the number of conversions. Imagery, tone of voice, branding. So yeah, if you're utilising, third-party resources to facilitate bookings or anything like that, just investigate the opportunity to what they call it white label it. If there is that potential there that you can, where you can then jump in and apply your branding, then that's obviously an advantage and worth exploring. So lead nurture strategies. So smaller, lower value assets that you can offer. So this is where we were talking about, a prospect coming in doing a micro conversion versus a macro conversion, what you can actually offer, that person that's only maybe signed up to your blog post, what you can offer them, a week afterwards, a month afterwards, in the lead up to the holidays afterwards. So start to have a little bit of a strategy in place as to how you can present different pieces of content to try and bring them back in and do a conversion. And understanding your audience, so aligning offerings with each stage of the buyer journey. So if you know that you've got a certain amount of emails that you've acquired from a blog post subscription, or it could be that you've got an email list of pre-existing customers that bought from you this time last year, and you want to go, okay, well, how can I actually try and get these guys thinking ahead of time? And not only do I want them to buy what they bought this time last year, but I want them to actually consider buying X, Y, Z. So it's about actually starting to, map not only who you're talking to, but also, wherever you can, start to map their habits. And evaluating your high value assets content, and ensuring data capture on high value assets. So when we talk about that, so we're talking about things like might be like a webinar series. It could be might be a more of an actual technical document on how to do something or how to manage something. It might be a behind the scenes sneak peek at a particular process or maybe an experience that no one has seen before. So something that is quite valuable in the user's side, going, oh, geez, I want to see that, I want to watch that, I want to read that, I want access to that. And making sure that you've got that gated, so you don't give away these high value assets that your company has for free. So bare bones, at least an email address in exchange. You can always give them a teaser, let them have a taste for that. You'll often find, you've probably experienced this yourself, where you'll start to read something and then you'll want to get through, to the rest of it. To proceed, you've actually got to pop your email address in. Or it could be that you're looking at, maybe templates or tools and that sort of thing online, and you can see it, oh, that would be absolutely perfect for what I want to do. But in order to download it, you've got to pop your email address in. So it's all those sort of things. If you've got something that's of high perceived value, people will hand over their email address, but they will not give you that for nothing. So if you've got valuable content there that you can develop, then that's a really good way to gather those bare bones email addresses. Don't ask for a whole list of contact details, because you won't get them. But an email address is perfectly fine. And then you've got a whole range of email addresses that have subscribed to varying different types of content. You know exactly then what they're interested in, so you can start to then go, okay, well, what am I going to give them next? And help sort of create that level of familiarity, so that when they are ready to purchase, then you've already got them effectively halfway down. So when it comes to user experience, so small business owners need to check in frequently. So, and when we talk about checking in, so we're talking about analytics, we're talking about competitor analysis, we're talking about customer research, surveys, that sort of thing. Just actually having casual chats around, how did you find purchasing online? How did you find that particular form process? Just asking. If we don't ask, we don't know. And being able to obviously test and pivot strategies and act on feedback that we get. So fundamentally, user experience is where form meets function for both the business itself and the site users. So it has to be there's got to be a balance. So it's got to obviously function and meet the business's objectives, but it's also got to be a seamless and positive experience for the user as well. So we can't obviously have one without that. It can't be an amazing user experience and there's no forms because they sort of didn't work. It's got to basically tick both boxes, and sometimes there needs to be a compromise. So to maximise conversions, the user's needs, wants and questions need to be at the core of the site's design and position the website as one of your most valuable digital marketing assets. So that in itself, if we look at user-centric design, and we look at any sort of digital marketing tactic, more often than not, the website is the mothership that basically is at the centre of all of those strategies. So we're looking at lead generation that comes in through various different channels. We're driving that back to the website. And it won't necessarily be the homepage. It'll be different landing pages, which will then have a call to action. And that doesn't matter whether it's it could be a piece of a PR where they've talked about interviewed a customer that's used the product, that's totally amazed by it and is a massive advocate. There's obviously word references in that particular story. They can reference the website for more information. Or it's a lead magnet ad on Facebook that features a particular photo, which is then obviously transferred across onto maybe a dedicated promo page on your site. Ultimately, the website has the capacity to capture conversions and to capture customer details, and those in turn can then be used again for remarketing and continuing to basically cultivate repeat sales and brand advocacy. So it's a very powerful element to your marketing strategy, especially when it comes to a digital space, and often it's the heart and soul. So it's actually the one that's receiving all of those leads. So all of the tactics are deployed to ultimately drive traffic back to your website to capture those conversions. So it is very important that it has a positive user experience, and it is performing at its best. And there's no underlying technical structural issues that are compromising that experience. So hopefully that's sort of given you some top level insights into user experience around websites and how they can, yes, hinder or provide a massive advantage to your business around lead gen specifically. We've got a little bit of time. If anyone's got any questions, I know we didn't have any activity sheets with that one, but did anyone have any sort of surprising results? Did anyone get a chance to run the site speed tester over the URL?
Yeah. I'm not surprised. When you do look at some of the government websites, their websites can be very complex. So one of the things that sort of stands out too with some websites that you'll notice out there is some sites are built for a specific purpose. So we know things like a government website, they're there for a specific function, which is to answer to people when they need to find forms or instructions on how to do things. So irregardless of that particular site experience, people need the information that it contains. So you'll find that it can be a frustrating site to go through, but when you need specific information, especially when you're trying to register a boat or a car or something like that, you have to run down the gauntlet that is the Queensland government website. But generally, when people are searching for an experience on a product or service, or they're looking to go somewhere, that whole speed of experience makes things a lot easier. You'll probably know from your own browsing habits what happens when you guys personally come across a website that just won't load or is difficult to find information. What would be the standard response that you would take when you're in that situation? I know for me, I'd leave that website pretty quick. That's just how I operate. But you know from your own habits, some of the ways in which you interact yourself with those websites tells you what not to do on your own website. Yes, Kate, you can. Sorry, Christine, I'll come back to you. There may be a bit more homework required for you, Christine. Happy to have a chat. If you flick through your link, we're happy to take a look and, can definitely offer some insight from what we might be able to see. And Kate, Square shopping sites can be quite handy and easy to set up if you're self-managing a website. That's definitely an option. WordPress can also handle online shopping stuff as well. Just comes down to, I guess, technical skill, time and availability to go there. You'll find that even Square shopping sites need optimization from time to time and might need a little bit of help to get traffic to the sites too. So they all sort of have their place. But again, happy to take a look and let you know what we think as well. If you flick through a link for us, more than happy to check that out. If you want both a shop and a blog, what is best? It's a good question. I'm pretty sure that both Square and or WordPress can do that, but WordPress was originally built as a blogging platform. That's where WordPress originated. So when WordPress first came out, it was heavily used by people that were in blogs, and this is going way back in internet, but not as far back as what people might think. So we're talking the early to mid 2000s there. WordPress was really emerging and finding its strides in that space. But it's an open source with a lot of plugins. So it does allow the online shopping and a lot of customization. So when people want a very basic site to fire up, they might use something like Square or Wix or something similar to that. They've got pre-made templates and you can get them out the door very quickly and get deployed and into market. For people that want a bit more customization, they'll invest a bit of time into WordPress, or they'll look at what they can do in WordPress where they want a specific look, feel, experience, and they really want to be able to tinker and customize their website. They may go into WordPress. So yeah. Yeah, that is another good question for you there, Kate. I think, it is the best way to do it. Depends on what the product is, I think would be a good sort of answer to that question. Mainly because if someone's searching for a particular product, they'll type that product in Google. So when you're searching a product, what is it that you do when you go searching? Do you type in the name of a product and then you click on that and it takes you to the product page? I think in the case with a blog, you might have people talking about your product and the benefits of your product. So you're actually looking for people that haven't made a decision on whether or not they want to buy your product or not. So a blog is handy to give them information to determine to make that purchasing decision. So if we go back to our marketing fundamentals, the brand awareness is, this is my business and I have all these products. The middle of funnel is, I've got this product that might interest you, but I need to convince you to purchase it. And the bottom of funnel is, they then click to purchase. So at the top of your funnel, the awareness, it could be your Facebook ad, check out all the products we've got, they're fantastic. The middle of funnel could be your blog where you're talking about the product or someone has written about your product, giving you an endorsement. And then the bottom of the funnel is you've then moved them to your shop where they can purchase it, put it in their cart, and you may have given them, a discount, or you may have incentivized that in your blog. For people that have read this blog, get exclusive access to 10% off. Things like that, and you might give them an access code through your blog, which makes your blog more relevant to them to read it. The best way to do it, it's a good sort of question. It's hard to know exactly the best way depending on what your product is. For new products that aren't tried and tested, a blog could be a great way to do it, but you still have to drive traffic to your blog, which then drives it to your shop. So we know that when people are looking for something specific, they're more inclined to try and get to that purchasing as quick as they can and make that as simple as possible.
Yeah, and I think with your blog too, Kate, there's another opportunity there where you obviously want to err on the side. Sometimes I was saying before, your blog is about quality content that you've got high levels of engagement with your potential customers or existing customers with. One thing that you can do with a blog, which isn't overly invasive, is you can hyperlink within the copy on that blog. So if you're maybe you have a guest blogger talking about a recently released product and how they've found it or experienced it, you can actually hyperlink through to those product pages if you've got the e-commerce component to your website. So that's another way, and people know when things are hyperlinked. If that's going, oh shit, this sounds absolutely amazing, I definitely want get on board with this. You can easily see that there's hyperlinks within that content. And again, that's a really good SEO practice for your site as well, to have crosslinks between content pages.
And I just also realised there, Kate, one of your other questions, you can change your website without changing your domain. So if you've got your .com.au, if you change to Square, you can link your .com.au over to Square if needed.
No worries.
Does anyone else have any questions? No worries, guys. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for coming along. Look forward to seeing who comes next, but we'll see you there if you're in the next session.
Thanks, guys.